Just hours ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration, and Washington, D.C. looks more like a city preparing for a siege than a celebration. So what's the meaning behind all of this security theater? Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. As the nation prepares for tomorrow's peaceful transfer of power, there's an air of menace hanging over Washington, D.C. Instead of pomp and circumstance, the Capitol is bristling with barbed wire and HESCO barriers. In total, the nation's capital is now hosting over 25,000 National Guard troops. That's in addition to all the federal law enforcement and local law enforcement on the scene. It's hard to think that national healing is the Biden-Harris objective with this, while their underlings transform the streets of Washington into a fortress on lockdown. Media outlets have all been repeating the statistic that there will in fact be more National Guard troops deployed in D.C. than both the Iraq and Afghanistan theaters of war. They're sharing this information, of course, to heighten the public's anxiety over the perceived risk of another insurrection. These theatrics have far exceeded the actual scale of the threat thus far. Yes, the Capitol Hill riot on January 6th was lawless, awful, and stupid. Anyone involved who broke the law should be held to account. But there was no actual effort to overthrow the federal government by force. Calling this an insurrection is an exaggeration, and it's one that has real consequences, and we're seeing that play out right now. While there was some reprehensible violence in the Capitol Hill riot, including a lethal assault on a police officer and the fatal shooting of an unarmed female protester, it was, fortunately, limited. Hundreds of foolish, perhaps thousands, of right-wing wackos broke into the Capitol, but they were mostly guilty of trespassing, disorderly conduct, impeding government administration, and vandalism, okay? No matter what they say on CNN, this was not an equivalent threat to the British Redcoats burning down D.C. in 1812. The unprecedented martial preparations for this inauguration, however, look as though they're getting ready for a foreign military to invade at any minute. Photos of National Guard troops sleeping on the marble floors of the Capitol building, that's gotten a lot of attention. You see it right there. Very few people have asked, why are such extreme measures necessary? And wouldn't those soldiers have access to sleeping pads and bags? They're really going to sleep just on a marble floor? The implication of all this, though, is clear. The optics, the messaging. The Democrats want America to see D.C. as a city that's under siege. Under siege from whom? You have to ask the question. The right. They're setting up a show of force that is commensurate with their overblown fears of the recent, quote, right-wing coup that they blame on all Trump voters now. They've convinced a large number of Americans that these extreme measures are necessary because armed factions on the right will attempt to violently overthrow the United States government, and in their telling, again, as if this would be the second time. Now, keep in mind that they will sometimes admit, when asked about this, that there's no actual intelligence or threat reporting that such a plot is imminent. There is some chatter online from people who are clearly upset at the 2020 outcome. Some may be a bit deranged, and they're venting and maybe getting some attention. But anyone who spends 5 minutes online looking at the state of politics in America would be quickly overwhelmed with the amount of angry, crazy conspiracy theories that you can find very readily that are spouted from both sides of the political spectrum. Let's not forget the 4 years of Russia collusion lunacy, and that was mainstream among elected Democrats and their corporate media lackeys. Speaking of which, America's corporate media has been busy ratcheting up the rhetoric and exaggerating the threat posed by Trump supporters. For example, here's MSNBC's Mehdi Hasan telling viewers that Trump supporter terrorists are a greater threat than Al-Qaeda was.
The threat to our democracy and our quote-unquote way of life is much more serious and real now than it was even after September the 11th, 2001. And don't get me wrong, 9/11 was a horrific mass casualty attack of a kind unique in modern history. 3,000 people killed in a single morning. But in my view, Al-Qaeda after 9/11 was not as much of a threat to us did not have the kind of advantages or strengths even that this domestic movement of Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and militiamen and neo-Nazis and QAnon types, what I would call MAGA terrorists, that they have right now.
Not to be outdone, CNN's paid analyst Andrew McCabe, you remember him? He's a former acting FBI director who got fired for authorizing leaks to the Wall Street Journal. He compared the Capitol Hill, by the way, he also got angry at his subordinates for the leak that he knew he did himself. That's the kind of guy he is. But he compared the Capitol Hill rioters to mentally, ideologically, somehow similar in profile to the supporters of the Islamic State.
When we looked at those Americans who traveled to Syria for the purpose of joining the Islamic State, when you put all those faces and names down in one place, you had doctors, lawyers, you had people who were Muslim their entire life, and some people who had just converted only months earlier. You had rich people, you had poor people, men, women of every ethnic variety. So I think that's actually common to extremist groups. Some people are very vulnerable to and drawn into that core lie of any extremist movement, and that is exactly what we're seeing now with this particular group of Trump supporters.
Of course, all of this overheated rhetoric is meant to justify this week's military preparations, which are an overreaction, at least from a security standpoint. D.C. may be the most heavily policed and patrolled city in America in normal times. There are so many local and federal law enforcement agencies on the ground there, it's hard to keep them straight. I lived there for years, and I worked in the security realm. While some National Guard presence at the Capitol in light of the riot earlier this month is understandable, there's no reasonable explanation for the deployment of almost 30,000 troops to D.C. Regardless of how one votes, every American should feel like Joe Biden's presidential inauguration is, on a process level, the continuation of an essential political tradition. It should be, and almost certainly will be, and we're all praying for it to be, a peaceful, orderly event. Whatever anybody may think of the integrity of the last election or the policies of the incoming administration, there must be an understanding that this is the way it goes. This is the system we have. Messy as our politics may be, our system has proven durable through even more challenging times. There could be some actual unity in recognizing that tomorrow. But instead, the Democrat Party seems to have intentionally chosen to make the inauguration look like a state under siege. And we know who they blame for it. We know who they want you, the American people, to blame for it. This is being done for political leverage and will almost certainly be the justification for more aggressive surveillance against those with pro-Trump, anti-Democrat views. They're posing as victims now so that they can make real victims of their political opponents later. It is a troubling time for the country. All right, after the break, big tech censorship of conservatives continues, this time with the silencing of newly elected Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She also has a plan of her own for how she's going to deal with this incoming administration. She'll join us when we come back. Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you don't have the time to do it on your own? I felt exactly the same way as you until about a year ago. I've always loved the idea of real estate investments, but I didn't know how to invest in real estate while fulfilling all of my professional obligations and just life. A lot of stuff going on, right? I'm doing hours of radio and TV content every day. So how was I ever going to take the time to invest in real estate on my own? Then I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took all of the guesswork out of it for me. They found me an awesome property. They rented it out for me right away. They managed the tenant for me. They actually got a tenant in the week I closed on the property. And now I get a check every month like clockwork. Don't wait another second to see if my buddies at Done For You Real Estate can do for you what they did for me. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to see how it works today. Again, start your real estate investment journey the right way with experts you can trust. I do. I work with them. I know you will like this too. Visit doneforyoubuck.com today. It seems no conservative in D.C., including elected officials, are safe from big tech censorship. The latest victim is newly elected Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Twitter suspended Greene's account Sunday after she criticized Gabriel Sterling, COO for Georgia's Secretary of State. She tweeted that Sterling and other state leaders failed to address numerous allegations of fraud that occurred in November's election and Georgia's twin runoffs. But after a 12-hour ban from the platform, Representative Greene is back. She wasted no time calling out the hypocritical big tech giant, accusing them of having a God complex. Well, that's for sure. She joins us now to discuss how she plans on fighting back against the silencing of conservatives and more, now that the Republicans are about to be in the minority across government. A lot to discuss here. Congresswoman, let's start with this. The tweets that got you suspended, and you're now a sitting member of Congress. You tweeted that the 1/5 disaster in Georgia, or 1 for 5 disaster in Georgia lays solely in the hands of state leadership who failed voters in our state. Georgia Secretary of State Gabriel Sterling were begged by Republicans to fix our elections. They did nothing. They are to blame, not Donald Trump, not Collins for Georgia. And then morons like you are responsible for losing Georgia's second Republican Senate seat. This was to Gabriel Sterling. You ran a November 3rd election that was stolen because you idiots at the SOS mailed out millions of absentee ballots. What exactly did you do here that got the Twitter gods upset at you?
I don't really know, because it's pretty interesting. If you look at Little Gabe's tweet, his original tweet that I retweeted, he was put up a chart, and then he put out a false claim that President Trump, myself, and former Representative Doug Collins are to blame for losing the 2 Republican Senate seats. So when I charged back at him and told him my opinion, which, by the way, is the opinion of most Georgia Republican voters that I talked to, and I talked to a lot of them who agree with me, when I put my opinion back out and put the onus on him because he ran Georgia's election, somehow I got banned for 12 hours on Twitter. So I really don't know what to say. He can put out his false election claim, but I can't put out the reason why I think we lost our 2 Republican Senate seats without violence. So,
as a native Georgian and a member of Congress, can you just give us the short and sweet version of why did we lose those 2 Senate seats? Because a lot of people, myself included, were thinking that that's where we would finally at least get one victory. What happened?
I'll tell you what happened. Georgia, Gabriel Sterling, who was a paid contractor by the Secretary of State, he got paid $200,000 to do this job, run Georgia's elections. And I don't know why Brad Raffensperger, our Secretary of State, is missing in action. He seemed to do nothing. But Gabriel Sterling, Little Gabe, ran the election, and they mailed out request forms, 6.9 million of them during the primary, and people were allowed to request an absentee ballot for the general as well. So lots more absentee ballots got mailed out, and then they encouraged everyone to request one. Even though we were an open state, you could grocery shop, you can go to Lowe's, Home Depot, you can go to restaurants, you can go to work, and kids could go to school. But on November 3rd, they decided that absentee ballot voting was the way to go for Georgia. And then they also used Dominion machines, which everyone has cried foul and said these can be hacked. These can be a problem. Even Democrat senators like Amy Klobuchar in 2019 put out a statement of their concerns about these type of voting machines, and they named Dominion in their statement in 2019. So it's not a partisan issue. But you know what happened? Voters in Georgia, Republican voters, felt like the president's race was stolen. Hundreds of people signed affidavits at risk of perjuring themselves in a court of law, saying that they saw voter fraud. They screamed foul, they rallied, they protested, they begged and pleaded with state leaders, and our state leaders did nothing. Gabriel Sterling did nothing. The Secretary of State did nothing. The House and the state senators refused to convene. Nothing happened in Georgia. And then they told everybody to go back out and vote in the same election on January 5th to save our 2 Republican Senate seats.
Congressman, can I ask you, what do you think about Sidney Powell pulling her lawsuit today involving the state of Georgia and Dominion voting machines? Did she just decide, well, what do you think? Do you have any idea why she did that?
I really don't know. I haven't spoken to her, so I'm sorry. I'm not familiar enough with why she pulled it. I think if Dominion basically can satisfy the taxpayers. Taxpayers paid for those machines. They bought them with taxpayer dollars. And I think Dominion owes their customers who are taxpayers a forensic audit, and then just show the truth. And then no one would complain. There wouldn't have to be lawsuits. And if the election was fair and Democrats won, Democrats could be thrilled and be happy. and Republicans could be satisfied with the truth.
Well,
So
as
the
you
best
know, Joe Biden is going to be sworn in tomorrow as president, and there's a lot of militarization that's gone on in Washington, D.C. Almost 30,000 National Guard troops are expected to be deployed as of tomorrow there. A lot of imagery. I mean, I've been to Baghdad during the war. I know what militarization looks like, and it is reminiscent of that in some parts of D.C. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think, as somebody who's now also sworn an oath to the country as a member of Congress, when you hear your fellow members of Congress saying that there needs to be vetting of these National Guardsmen for right-wing Trump sympathies? I suppose it's not even really clear. It's just that they want them to be vetted because they can't be trusted all of a sudden. What is that?
I think it's a complete insult and a slap in the face to the brave men and women who serve in the military. I think it's insulting, and I'm appalled at it. You know, and the honest truth is, these Democrats that are begging and thrilled to have all this military encampment around the Capitol are the same Democrats that cheered on the riots and the violence that went on this entire year with Antifa and radical Marxist BLM. But when the terrible attack happens on the Capitol, these same Democrats are the first ones that want a military encampment with a wall, by the way, around the Capitol. They don't care about regular Americans being attacked all year long. They didn't want to send in the National Guard to save regular Americans whose businesses were being burned and looted and innocent people were being attacked. But they're thrilled to have a gigantic military fortress around the Capitol. And then they want to insult military members based on what their political views may be. I think this is a huge warning to all of our country and every American. I don't care who you vote for, that the Democrats in charge, they care about their opinion and the way they want to do things, and that's it. They don't care about you. They don't care about who works and pays taxes, and they do not care about respecting our military.
Before we let you go, Congresswoman, I just want to ask you, we've only got about a minute. On January 21st, you tweeted out you're filing articles of impeachment against Joe Biden. Just tell us based on what, and what are you hoping to accomplish with these articles?
Well, I'll tell you exactly. Republican voters across the entire country are fed up with Republicans in Congress that won't do anything about all of this corruption and abuse of power. Joe Biden is guilty of abusing power. When he was vice president of the United States, he was willing to withhold $1 billion in foreign aid just to get his way with a prosecutor that was going after his son, Hunter Biden. This is all on videotape. The evidence is all there, and it's very clear. We can't have a man serving as president of the United States that's willing to do anything and everything for his son and his son's business dealings with foreign countries and foreign energy companies. And so this is a danger to America. It's a danger to all Americans. And I have no problem, whether we're in the minority or not, going after Joe Biden or anyone else that is willing to use power and corruption just to get rich. And this is something that every single American should be appalled with. Nancy Pelosi lowered the bar of impeachment to the basement. So this one is clear and easy for me, and I am proud to introduce articles of impeachment on Joe Biden.
Congresswoman Greene, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Buck. Have a great day.
In the wake of the Capitol Hill riot, the left has expanded its campaign to cancel vocal Trump supporters. We're going to take a look at cancel culture's latest targets in tonight's Buck Brief. Stay right there. We've got an amazing new sponsor, my friends. They're awesome. Mammoth Nation. This is America's conservative discount club. Their mission is to fight for the conservative values and causes that we all care about. That includes conservative candidates, the police and first responders, active military and veterans, American farmers and ranchers, the Second Amendment, and much more. The proceeds from your membership and purchases help support all of these great causes. It's better than a donation. In return for your patriotism, you get great discounts on things like hotels, shopping, wireless, prescriptions, telehealth, and more. Spend your money where it counts. I'm a lifetime member. You should become a lifetime member too. Join the fight. This is a great program, and it's a great deal. Go to mammothnation.com/buck. Again, that's mammothnation.com/buck. Become a lifetime member today. Don't wait. There's great deals and great causes involved here. mammothnation.com/buck. Over the past few weeks, we've certainly seen a resurgence of cancel culture, which is one of the left's favorite tactics in silencing their opposition. Whether you're a multimillionaire, a senator, or even the president, recent events have proven that cancel culture can come for you no matter who you are. So sure, you may be able to have your opinion technically, but if you express it in any meaningful public way, the woke mob will simply make sure you lose your job, your income, your reputation, your ability to live a productive life. Is this really a society that honors free speech? Wouldn't living in a place with an open and honest exchange of ideas be an acceptable concept to most people? I think folks would usually agree with that, but these days, it's tough to tell. So how do we even get here to begin with? Let's examine all of this and some of the most recent examples of cancel culture run amok on today's Buck Brief. The first one is the one that I find most near and dear to my heart in a sense, the one that makes me the angriest. There are people that make a living because of free speech and the First Amendment, the free press, the media. And you would think that they would have respect for that First Amendment, not just as a legal mechanism for preventing government from either punishing or compelling speech. We know they actually want to compel speech sometimes, and the Democrats are okay with that. You know, bake that cake. That's a whole other thing. But even on the issue of news commentary, on issues of public policy, the very center, I mean, in the middle of the wheelhouse of what the First Amendment's all about, they're all saying, no, sorry, got to use whatever mechanisms we can in the private sector and soon to be in the public sector in this Biden administration to shut down ideas, thoughts, things, even facts that they don't like. CNN has a fellow named Oliver Darcy who wrote this, that CNN is pushing to close down Newsmax TV. They've been demanding operators drop Newsmax, which is currently carried by most of the major cable systems in the country. And Newsmax is also streamed free on most OTT platforms. Now, look, I mean, you could say I'm here on a digital channel doing a news show for you. Newsmax is not a company I work for, and in a sense, they're a competitor. I want them to have freedom of speech. I want them to have their carriage, have their say, have their platform. There are good people that work there. I have friends who work there, and they're doing a good job. So why should they be kicked off? Because the left wants it to be so. And this is happening all across the media where the people who make a living with the First Amendment are not protecting others who are now impacted by this. Social media, we've all seen, it's gotten completely out of control. They're purging conservatives, blue checks, everyday folks, kicking them off all over the place. But now they want to go after the cable conservatives. They want to go after OAN, Newsmax, and yes, even the mighty Fox News. You think they won't be successful in this? There's a Biden administration that's going to have a very different approach to free speech, that's for sure. And the private sector now. You know, we've long known that the left likes boycotts, even the threat of boycotts. They've learned that they just have to scare a company and they'll cut ties with conservatives, or they just have to scare a provider, a purveyor, and that will end a business relationship. Full disclosure, I am sponsored by Mike Lindell's MyPillow. I know Mike Lindell. He's a great guy running a great company, employs over 1,000 American workers. They make it all here in the USA. And guess what? Mike Lindell has told the media that Bed Bath & Beyond, Kohl's, Wayfair, and H-E-B have all dropped MyPillow because of public pressure on social media. And he says this is coming from leftist groups. And I'm sure it's true. Because guess what? I'm not being paid to say this right now. I sleep with a MyPillow. I sleep with the MyPillow sheets. I use all of his products. This is a great company, a great American company. And they're going after Mike Lindell. They're getting people to drop his products from Wayfair and Bed Bath & Beyond, big retailers, because of his politics. Is this the country we want to live in? Because it's the country we're getting deeper and deeper into. And even Home Alone, those of you that just went through your binge watching of holiday movie and TV fare may have gone to Home Alone, a Christmas movie, not quite as good as Die Hard, but there are two of them, so there's that. And Home Alone 2, I believe it's Macaulay Culkin who's the star of it. He is tweeting out support for removing Trump's cameo. There's a great scene. There you go. There's a scene where Trump appears briefly because he owned the Plaza Hotel at the time, and he appears briefly in Home Alone 2. And little Kevin McAllister says he's looking for something, and Trump says, go down there and make a right or something. It's just a brief moment. But it's the Trumpster. And he shows up and he does his thing. They want to Soviet-style erase the president from this movie. He was in the movie. There's nothing wrong with him in the movie. And yet they want to pull him out of it because it triggers people that a former president would be in a movie. Let's be honest. The first one was way better than the second one. I'm not even sure the second one's even really worth it, but if you want to watch it, you can. And then Josh Hawley has also faced more fallout. Lowe's Hotels canceled a fundraising event for him. So now they're going after politicians, pulling funding from them. I will say the good news is that Regnery Publishing, a great, long-time conservative free speech advocate, Regnery Publishing, I know, has picked up Senator Hawley's book, and I think they're going to sell a lot of copies, and they deserve to. But this is also a time when you have to see what's going on. You, people at home watching this right now, on your computer, your phone, your TV, you have to decide who you support and who you're going to keep in business. Because the left is coming after all of us now. This is the great media purge. It's beyond just social media. And so far, they've been able to get some victories. We have to hold the line. All right, now that the COVID-19 vaccine is rolling out, lockdowns, mask mandates, and social distancing, that should all be coming to an end too, right? According to our next guest, not if the so-called experts have their way, New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz is going to be with us in just a moment. This week marks 1 year since the first known COVID-19 diagnosis was reported in the U.S., and something that started off as 15 days to slow the spread turned into a year full of face masks, social distancing, strict lockdowns, and quarantine. But now that vaccines are here and getting in wider and wider distribution, it's time to celebrate the beginning of the end of this plague, right? Not so fast. Experts, government leaders, and the media have gained control of the American people in the last 12 months, and they seem determined to keep that control. In her latest op-ed, New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz says we need to beware the experts who are invested in making this abnormal way of life we're living in permanent. She joins us now to discuss. Carol, great piece in the New York Post. Let's start with this one, because there are a few areas we're going to dive into together. And I know you're now somebody that has experienced firsthand the insanity of the lockdowners in New York City. You point out that there's a New York Times piece that talks about, and that quotes a doctor from the American Academy of Pediatrics who said, vaccinated people will still need to wear masks because those with high viral loads could be even worse spreaders. Now, let's just be very clear about this. There are other doctors who will point out that this would be a first in medical history, that being vaccinated so you are safe from the disease would mean everywhere else that you can't give it. If you have the smallpox vaccine, you're not giving people smallpox, right? If you're assuming you don't get infected. So what's going on here?
So it was a New York Times article that came out in December. And I think people just read the headline and that's it. They didn't read the rest of the piece, because in the piece, they break down how something like this could happen. They tested on monkeys. They vaccinated these monkeys and then exposed them to a massive amount of coronavirus. And some of that coronavirus got stuck in their nose despite them having the vaccine. But it was still far less than an unvaccinated monkey would have had. And again, don't expose yourself to a large amount of coronavirus and you should be good to go. But people just like being afraid and the hysteria being at an all-time high. And these scientists have become rock stars and they're sort of enjoying it. And it's a real problem that we are being told we won't be able to move on from this.
And there are doctors, I mean, I've seen it, who are saying we really shouldn't be, like the medical profession shouldn't be downplaying the effectiveness of vaccines either. Well, you're talking about a vaccine that's 95, 96% effective, which the ones that are already out have reached that.
Yeah.
You start to think about what that means for not only the individual, but the chance of you getting infected would be, roughly 4 or 5%. The chance of you getting infected and passing that to somebody else who has the vaccine is an even smaller fraction of that. This is how herd immunity works. But the
That's
medical personnel, I mean, the Faucis of the world are saying we can only live in a zero risk from COVID society.
Yeah, I don't know how we got to that because we've never had zero risk. There's always been risk. There's always been risk from coronavirus. There have been previous coronaviruses, that we never had zero risk from. So absolutely, we've gotten to a place where we can't imagine any level of risk. And the next sort of phase of this is that kids under 12, they haven't even started trials on those kids yet for vaccines. So they might not have vaccines ever. Does that mean that they're wearing masks for the rest of their lives? Well, some scientists are saying, yes, that's exactly what it means. They have to be wearing masks always.
Now, you brought up children. Joe Biden's nomination for senior advisor, or I guess his pick for senior advisor for his COVID response team, this guy Andy Slavitt, shared recently on Twitter, this was a quote, "We should be more careful with kids. They should circulate less or will become vectors, like mosquitoes carrying a tropical disease. Of course, they can become sick themselves this way. I'm not sure what I would say about schools besides wishing Trump had built testing up." This is actually anti-science garbage. We have very strong numbers about the truth about children and schools. What does it say, Carol?
Well, that's the thing. Andy Slavitt is not a scientist, and yet he has been taken seriously because he has these long, very hysterical threads on Twitter that the left has sort of bought into. At one point, he lives in like the suburbs and he has a car. At one point, he advocated shutting down all public transportation all across the country. Well, sure, why not? It doesn't affect him. But yeah, he's not somebody that we should be listening to, and he is a hysteric, and he puts these hysterical opinions out onto Twitter and gets applause for it. And somehow now he might be in the Biden administration. It's very concerning because his ideas are crazy. In any other situation, we would recognize that. But because we're in this COVID mania where we got to keep people safe, we got to keep people safe, we got to keep people safe, he becomes a rational voice, and he's just not.
There's also this Professor Gavin Yamay, who's an MD, MPH. I've noticed the really cool blue check MDs, they need something beyond the MD, right? MD, PhD, MD, MPH, right? They've got to throw all the credentials, so we're supposed to listen to whatever lockdown, which is policy, which is politics, whatever lockdown nonsense they come up with. But this professor says, first, we need to get serious about high filtration masks for all. Y'all saw Mitt Romney on Wednesday night. He had a tightly fitting N95 mask under his cloth mask. That's what every single American should have. Carol, I have been saying on Twitter for months that we are going to get to a point where they say we need double masks, and it actually needs to be N95 masks, and has been all along. People went crazy on me for this, so that I don't know what I'm talking about. Here we are. Gee, how did I see this coming?
Right. I was in Manhattan in December, and I saw 3 separate people wearing 2 masks, and I was like, whoa, what is happening? But I knew it was coming because I had seen it was like 2 people in one neighborhood and then 1 person in another neighborhood. And once you see 3, you sort of know it's going to be a trend. And it's been scary because, again, just like you, people said to me, oh, stop scaring people, stop fear mongering. A lot of the stuff that I say, people say, oh, stop fear mongering, but like, it ends up happening. And the 2 masks thing absolutely was coming. And as I say in the piece, why 2? Why not 3? Why not 5? Why not 8? If 2 is safer than 1, I mean, certainly you could be wearing 8 masks.
I think we need to start shaming all the people who walk around without goggles on, because viruses can also enter your system through your ocular cavity or whatever. And so if you're serious about this, you got to have a double mask, N95, and goggles, and probably gloves, and don't leave your house. Thanks, Dr. Fauci. One more thing. Go ahead.
8 masks or bust.
Yeah, I mean, the more masks you wear, the more serious. If you wear it alone in your car, then you're a serious person about this virus, right? Because you're stopping the spread of virus that you probably don't even have by the numbers. But anyway, if you do have it, you're stopping spreading it into open air, driving 60 miles an hour with no one else around you. So that's really good to know. Right now, as I talk to you, my father is in line, trying to get vaccinated here in New York City. And there's an additional sense of urgency for all, he's in that higher age category, higher risk category. Yeah. And I've been encouraging him to get that vaccine as soon as possible because I actually do believe in the science. And there's this urgency because of the concern that New York may run out. They haven't even gotten, they haven't even had a full week yet of over 75 vaccinations for people over 75. Here's de Blasio saying this for New York City.
At the rate we are going, we will begin to run out on Thursday. This Thursday, 2 days from now. And we will have literally nothing left to give as of Friday. If we don't get more vaccine quickly, a new supply of vaccine, we will have to cancel appointments. This is crazy. This is not the way it should be. We have the ability to vaccinate a huge number of people. We need the vaccine to go with it. I'm very hopeful the Biden administration is going to fix a lot of this. They're just coming into office, of course. It's going to take time, but their commitment is there, and I appreciate that deeply.
This is crazy, but how could this be? They're running out of vaccine already? What's going on here?
Well, I mean, among other problems, New York has thrown out a large number of vaccines because they had a very strict policy about who could get vaccinated, and they couldn't step outside of that line. That blame falls squarely on Governor Cuomo, who said that he would fine individual doctors if they were found to be giving out vaccines, even if they were about to go bad. It didn't matter. So a lot of this is absolutely just ineptitude. The idea that Joe Biden is going to come in and solve this is questionable.
This is delusional.
His commitment is to 100 million vaccines in 100 days. Now, I'm not great at math, but we're at around 1 million vaccines a day now, so he will keep doing what we're doing for the next 100 days.
In fact, there will be 250 million doses that have been distributed based on the current rate by 100 days. So he will have gotten less than half of the actual distributed vaccinations done in 100 days. Congratulations, Joe. But I mean, if he remembers to keep his pants on when he walks out to the podium, we're all supposed to clap and think he's a genius. But anyway, Carol, great piece in the New York Post. Thanks so much for standing strong on this one. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's time for a rapid fire look at some of the stories we haven't had a chance to get to yet, but we still should. Quick hits are up next. These days, being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in is anything but predictable. We can all benefit from something reliable right about now. What could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver you can actually hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group now and learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now, 833-600-GOLD. Because if you're looking to diversify or just take action today to preserve your wealth over the long run, real gold and silver is for you. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Give them a call right now, 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. Senator Rand Paul, also a doctor, has some sharp words for Dr. Fauci. Rashida Tlaib calls Israel racist, and a fake Republican issues calls for unity. Those stories in tonight's Quick Hits. Let's start with Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. All right, now, if you watch the show or have heard my radio show or listen to my podcast or follow me on social media, know I think that the mask mania is completely insane. That doesn't mean that in all circumstances you shouldn't wear a mask, but it does mean that people who are saying things like, let's just mask up, for another couple of years just to be safe, we have a vaccine coming out. That means that you won't be at real risk for the disease once you get the vaccine, nor are you at risk of giving this to other people, as we've been discussing on the show today. So Senator Rand Paul, MD, is telling people the following. Play it.
But what I tell people is use common sense. If you've had the disease or you've been vaccinated and you're several weeks out from your second dose, throw your mask away and tell Dr. Fauci to take a leap. Because once you have immunity, you don't need to do this. They will never let up.
They will never let up. He's right. There's never going to come a time when these public health experts, who are now the new high priests of American society, we couldn't actually go to churches, you know. You couldn't actually see your priest for a long time. But the high priests of the blue check hashtag science world, they like this power and authority. And they don't want to ever tell people that they can have their lives back. Who wants to just be, you know, another epidemiologist doing whatever for whomever? And no, they want to be important and powerful. And as long as they get to tell you, no, sorry, not safe yet, that's what they're going to do. And Dr./Senator Rand Paul knows this. Once you're vaccinated, you should be able to say adios to the mask, full stop. But there are people who are going to fight on that one. You watch. You know that. You know I see this stuff coming. Colonel Mo Davis, this guy spent some of his career as a prosecutor of al-Qaeda terrorists held at Gitmo. He's a career military man, and this is what he said about Madison Cawthorn, who's a newly elected member of Congress, who was also wheelchair-bound because of an accident many years ago. He wrote, quote, "I was chief prosecutor at Guantanamo for over 2 years. There's far more evidence of Congressman Madison Cawthorn's guilt than there was guilt for 95% of the detainees. It's time we start a domestic war on sedition by American terrorists." Can't you just feel all the healing and unity from Democrats like this? Oh, they just want to hug you so close with all the unity and then throw you into the gulag, apparently. That's the next step. This kind of rhetoric is unhelpful, but it's important you know that it's out there. It's important you know what they're saying, because there are a lot of Democrats who believe this stuff. They think if you voted for Trump, you are a clear and present danger to our democracy. They don't really connect the dots with how 75 million people, including a lot of their friends and neighbors, whether they care to understand this or not on the left, how 75 million people could all somehow be guilty of this insurrection, but they're just skipping past the logic steps here and saying, yeah, you obey, you bend the knee, or we will crush you. That's the whole point. One thing that you're going to see a lot more of is pronouncements from Democrats about all things foreign policy related, because now Joe Biden is going to be, I know, got to say it, Joe Biden's going to be running foreign policy for the United States government. Yes, the Secretary of State, but the president is where the buck stops. Pardon the expression. Rashida Tlaib is a member of the squad, a very prominent congresswoman, and just so you get a sense of where some U.S. policy is going, here's what she said. She combined Palestine and vaccinations and racism, and here you go.
I mean, I think it's really important to understand Israel as a racist state, and that they would deny Palestinians like my grandmother access to a vaccine, that they don't believe that she's an equal human being that deserves to live, deserves to be able to be protected by this global pandemic. And it's really hard to watch as this apartheid state continues to deny their own neighbors.
Apartheid state, racist, awful. That's what she's saying about Israel. You'll hear a lot more of that from the far left of the Democrat Party, and their voices are only going to grow in the months and, unfortunately, the years ahead. Voices that are growing, unfortunately for everybody, include this fellow, who I would argue is among the dumbest cable news commentators on television. But he's out there to tell everybody that there will be no unity. He was a Republican. Now he does the bidding of the left. Steve Schmidt. Here he is.
A lot of these members on the Republican side say now we need unity. There will be no unity with seditionists. The only thing we offer them is the chance for them to apologize and to retire from public life. That's the only thing we can do. Only two ways to win a fight, Nicole: to bring your opponent to defeat through submission, or they get you through exhaustion. And we can't become exhausted in this fight.
Submit, he says. That guy was paid a lot of money. That guy ran John McCain's 2008 unsuccessful presidential campaign. Yeah. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Have a great night. Shields high.